Horror with Donna and Eric. I'm Donna,
And I'm Eric.
and tonight we are talking about John Carpenter's The Thing, obviously the movie. Um,
Yeah, we're going to do a series of movies that, how did we word it? Movies that inspired us or influenced
Shaped our
us.
youth. Yeah,
Yeah. And so this will be the first one, and it was one that would have been on both our lists, I think.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we're
for
going to
sure.
do a couple different series, and then we'll do we're going to do a 4 pack, so that we'll have 8 in the first series, and then we'll do 8 more, and then we may continue. Or I mean, I think we could do movies, I think we could do it every episode for a year, and we could
Yeah.
come up with different movies because I feel like our generation was kind of raised on all this stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and so I just sometimes I look at it when you see people's comments and stuff, and you're like, okay, like they just now are discovering some of these movies that we watched all the time when we were younger.
Yeah, yeah. The Thing. It's been a while since I've watched it like start to finish. I think the last time I watched the full movie was maybe last year sometime. Um, so it was good to see it again from start to finish. And had forgotten some things, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. And
I try and watch it once a year, although I do think it's been usually I watch it around my birthday, so but I didn't do it this year, so it's probably been a year and a half since I've seen it. Um, yeah, this movie's great. This movie's darn near perfect.
yeah,
I mean, when somebody asks me what my favorite movie is, a lot of times this is in consideration
yeah,
through all the genres. But as a horror movie, it's it's for sure perfect. But as
hmm,
just a movie itself, I mean, that's the cool thing about Carpenter. We always talk about Carpenter as this horror director, but I'm sure he would be offended by that because I think he sees himself as just a director, and sometimes his
right,
movies, jump into this subgenre. But I mean, you look at he does a lot of science fiction and a little fantasy, a lot of action. So I mean, he's kind of the guy that fits into that everything is horror
yeah,
um, as a director. But
yeah. Because you could
how can
look at
you
it
not?
the other, yeah, you could look at it the other way that The Thing is more sci-fi.
Oh, I can 100% do that because my father
Yeah.
hates horror movies and would never watch horror movies. And this is one of his favorite movies. This is the movie
Okay.
he showed it to me at a very young age. First time I saw The Thing, I watched more than half of it from behind the couch. And I was probably like 6, but he
Yeah.
thought it was a cool movie. But all the stuff going on, yeah, no, it was pretty horrific. So
Yeah. So
especially when the people start, going in different directions and the thing starts doing its thing. So
yeah, so The Thing is so this is the 1982 version. There was an older version that's a not necessarily the same movie, but it's the
it's the
same.
movie that he credits the thing of it's based off of a story, but he's kind of remaking that movie from the
Okay.
50s. Um, what is it? The thing from another world? Is that what it's called? I always know it until I need to know it. I can see the
Yeah.
stupid thing, but I can't read the side of it because I don't have my glasses on. Yeah, it's the you know what, this is gonna drive me crazy. So hold on one second. Yes. Yeah, here it is. Oh.
Okay.
We may have to throw in a technical difficulties on that one. But there it is. Thing from Another World. This
Okay.
is the classic from the 50s. Um, it the parallel is they find a spaceship, they find the body, they bring the body back to camp, it defrosts, and it tries to attack. The difference is it's nothing like the alien in Carpenter's movie. Or the original short story. It doesn't really try to take over it. It's humanoid in shape, So that's their thing, that it's trying to be humanoid, but it doesn't shapeshift or anything like that.
Yeah.
So you don't have that the suspense is built on just it disappearing and attacking and stuff. It's not really anything to do with it trying to completely take over by, you know, copying other life forms.
Yeah, assimilating into it. And I love this oops, what did I do here? Man is the warmest place to hide. I love that line. That's like perfect for um this movie because there's a lot of, it freezes because they're in
Mhm.
Antarctica and it doesn't like the cold. Um, so it turns into a human so it can kind of stay warm. So now is
Well,
this just an alternate
yeah, I think
poster?
that's just the alternate. It may have been, I remember the tagline, you know, but I don't. The poster that usually you see is the other one that's on the DVD.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really cool alternate posters. The one I have is it's got the same tagline, but it's drawn a little different. Man is the warmest place to hide. Um, but yeah, no, I think it's just an alternate cover. I just thought it was cool.
Yeah. Now this movie definitely holds up. It came out in 1982 and it definitely holds up through the years because it was just as terrifying to me watching it over the weekend as it was the first time I ever saw it.
Yes, it's really cool. Location is perfect, and of course, they didn't film it in Antarctica, but they filmed it in a place that pretty much mirrors it, mimics it, up in Canada, and so they were able to get the snow and the cold. And I, there was like 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Well, I think it was 20 years ago. I went through a weird watching all of the special features and all the director commentary and all that stuff, and so I was well versed on the thing because I watched it all in a row when I got like the new collector's edition Blu-ray or
Mm,
something. So I think they went up there, built the stuff, and let it kind of sit there for a little while as the snow falls and all that stuff. So it really looks like it's the camp's encased. And the same with the other camp, that the Norwegian camp, they have it built and they kind of break it down a little bit so that it looks like it's got the damage, and then they let the elements take over. I thought this was weird too, though. If you count the number of people in the picture with the helicopter, there's only 11 people there, but we have 12 characters. And I don't know if they did that on purpose or if that's supposed to tell us something, but there's obviously somebody missing in that picture, or I can't count.
let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Well,
Right. So there's 12 characters. So the one that I think is missing is a pretty big player. So maybe he just wasn't there. Maybe he was cast late. I don't remember any of those stories. So, but that's a really cool picture
mm,
with them all set up. I don't know if this was at the end or the beginning when they took this shot, but I just think it's a cool picture to kind of give you an idea of the people that are in this situation.
yeah. Hey, Kurt Russell with his big old hair.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I love about that early 80s Kurt Russell as he's trying to shed the Disney. Because, when we were growing up, and right before we were growing up, Kurt Russell was a big Disney. He was in all the Disney movies. He was always the actor they turned to, and so he really had to shed the kid actor stuff to get into normal Hollywood. And I think he used Carpenter to do that. Escape from
Yeah.
New York, The Thing, those two movies really showed his the complete opposite of what he was doing with Disney. So it really allowed him to get out there. Although I don't know if The Thing was now it's a great decision, but at the time it wasn't a great decision because the movie bombed. So I
Huh?
don't know if at the time if it hurt him, but it does show his range and allowed others to see that, well, he could at least be in one of those movies, even if the movie didn't do well enough to say he could carry a movie. But I think Escape from New York does well enough that it kind of balances it out.
Yeah. It's Childs that's missing. This is Knowles.
Yeah.
And Childs is a very tall black man, and that's not him. So that's
All
who's
right.
missing.
Well, see, I thought that was him crouched down, and that it was the diabetes guy that's missing. Yeah, I
Mm,
think that is. I think that is Knowles,
yeah,
but he's just crouched down, so he's not as tall as the other guys.
yeah,
We'll see in a second.
yeah.
So
And
the
this is, of course,
Norwegian.
the Norwegian. Yep.
So the reason I did it this way was to get us in the frame of it because the movie's pretty. It just starts. We're in Antarctica. Well, it starts with the aircraft, the alien ship crashing, and then we don't know where it crashes, but we know it crashed on Earth. It doesn't give us a timeline either, I don't think. I don't think it flashes forward with any kind of a thing. It's just now
No.
we're in Antarctica. And so it starts with the Norwegian helicopter chasing a husky, and the husky leads them to the American base. And so in Antarctica, there's all these little bases because nobody owns Antarctica. It's the one place that nobody can claim. They all can have bases and stuff on there, and most countries do. And so they do their testing and all the other stuff.
Yeah, and they said the Norwegian was the base was only like 40 minutes away
Right.
or
And I
something
think
like
a lot
that.
of them are very close. I think they're close
Yeah,
enough that they can help each other if they need to. Um, and then probably the ones that are doing more questionable things are probably farther away where they're not able to, you don't see as much stuff. And I'm sure there's some
yeah,
really great stories you could come up with that. Um, but so you have the Norwegian, the helicopter crashes, one guy's out. He starts firing into the crowd of Americans as they come out to see what's going on because he's trying to kill this dog. The dog gets away, and then the Americans shoot this guy.
yeah,
So then that's the basis of the story: is why did the Norwegians go crazy? We need to go figure it out. But
yeah,
it's on the cusp of a snowstorm. So in Antarctica, when there's a snowstorm, you don't really travel. You shouldn't even be outside. But they've decided that they need to do this. So
yeah. And Kurt
it's a per
Russell's character um it never wears his hat. And if he does wear a hat, it's like this like just like a fishing hat or something. It's
yeah,
not even
it's like a floppy cowboy hat,
yeah,
like a duster or something.
yeah.
Um, but he's one of two or three pilots,
Hmm.
and then the rest of them are scientists. One of them's a cook, and a couple of them I feel like they don't really give us what they are, but they are experts in something. One of them's the expert with the radios, and then you've got guys that probably are mechanics,
Yeah.
things that we don't need to know what they can do, but and there's of course a dog specialist who takes care of the dogs they have for when they travel with the sled.
Yeah. So this is what the Norwegians found. So after they figure out um they found some weird stuff in the crash. They found like all these cans of what is it, kerosene, which makes the helicopter. So then of course Mac decides he wants to go and go up to the camp and figure out what's going on and um they find it.
Everything's Norwegian, so they don't know exactly what they find, but they take all the papers and the videos they found,
Yeah.
and they find a big block of ice that's been melted partially, and a map that tells them, some information, and then they figure out where they need to go to find where the block of ice came from, and then also they find the spaceship.
Yeah. The coolest part about them going to the Norwegian camp is when they find the guy in the chair and he had cut his wrists and the blood had frozen.
Yeah.
Um, I think that was pretty gruesome for not a lot. Like, yeah, it was a lot of blood, but do you know what I'm trying to say? It
Uh-huh.
wasn't like splattery and everything, but just the fact that this guy cut his wrists and the blood froze
Yeah.
as it was coming out of him.
It shows you
Yeah.
how extreme the elements are,
Yeah.
but also how desperate this guy was to end it because of whatever it is. And they still don't know what it is. They know that the Norwegians were shooting at a dog. So all they know
Yeah.
is the Norwegians found this stuff, but they have no clue how it ties together to what happened to the Norwegians.
Yeah.
or
Or the
anything else
dog.
that's going. Yeah. In fact,
Yeah.
in their mind, the dog is nothing but a dog.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the dogs had free reign of the camp for like a third of the movie or fourth of the movie.
Yeah.
And so by that time, we've already know that it's interacted with people singularly. And we don't know what happened. We don't know why, but we know that this dog is met up with people, and we haven't been told which people. Of course, that's a really cool thing about the movie is that they did a really good job of making the audience just as tense and just as
Suspicious.
suspicious of everyone as the
Everybody.
actors are,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they don't show their hands at all, and that's real. I think that's what makes the movie work so well is that you have no idea during the whole thing who the bad guys are.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really funny when you got sometimes when they start stating the case that, oh, I know I'm human. I
Yeah.
just don't know about, but still exactly what you'd expect the alien to say. And
Exactly.
so I think
Exactly.
and that's the difference of that and the thing from another world. The thing from another world didn't talk, just makes noise. So you wouldn't have that aspect either. It was a vegetation. That's how they justified the cold affecting it. Is that the thing from another world was some sort of vegetable based life form,
Okay.
and so then that's why the fire works so well because of course fire works on everything, so I don't know why
Yeah,
that works
right.
here,
Everything.
but also the cold was causing it to have issues because they couldn't see the sun, so it was
Yeah.
having trouble. But of course, Carpenter's going to be way. I mean, he's going to accelerate the story and the way that the creature is and how violent everything is because I guess that's what I think of when I think of early 80s movies though is how in your face everything is. If it's sex, it's right there. If it's the violence on all the horror movies really ramped up to the point where people were complaining about it and everybody was testing how far they could go.
Hmm.
So you definitely get some really cool things with the monsters. And I think the number one thing though with this movie, if you take everything out of it, it's almost perfectly cast.
Yeah.
And so that's why I don't understand why it didn't do well. It had to have been a piss poor ad campaign
Yeah. I was gonna say for the 80s, I'm really surprised at it.
because this cast is, I mean, it's the perfect mixture of established character
Yep.
actors, leading men, and new people coming on to the
Yep.
scene.
Yep.
And just the whole idea of I just don't get it. The whole idea of the monster, the whole idea of the location and this cast, it should have been the movie of the year. And for the fact that it did so poorly,
Yeah.
it's a head shaker. It just shows you how much influence a bad studio has on some of these movies and why some of the
Yeah.
movies that we love now or that we grew up loving that other people never understood who watch it later and then they kind of get it is because of how the ad campaign was mishandled, how
Yep.
it's basically they have a bad blurb and so nobody picked it up to check it out and so they're missing out on this great story.
Yeah. Yeah. So McCready is, of course, Kurt Russell. Um, I was bad. I didn't really look up the actors' names, but you have Childs and Knowles.
Childs is Larry David or
Okay.
David Larry or whatever his name is. I mean, he's the voice of the president in Rick and Morty. He's been in a ton of stuff. I mean, he's um, a big actor, and this is one of his earlier roles. So I don't know. Yeah, I didn't do the same thing. I just know who most of these people are from. Different, I recognize them from different movies and stuff.
Yeah.
Blair's the diabetes guy. Wasn't he in Cocoon?
Yep.
And Dr. Cooper, he's in a lot of stuff. Gary's always a TV kind of role player kind of guy. Clark was in the miniseries on TV.
Okay.
He also was the dad in I want to say Webster, but maybe that's not right. Or he might look like the guy from Webster. I don't know. The other ones are all people you recognize from other movies, but I don't know them specifically from anything.
Yeah. Yeah, so McCready always, like I said before, he always cracked me up. He's like, everybody's like bundled up and they're in Antarctica, and he's like, just like got a jacket on and no like gloves, no hat. Like,
It'd be interesting to know his backstory because they don't really get into any of the reason why these people are here. And if it's anything like normal, I want to say that they sign up for 6 months and you're sent to Antarctica to do whatever you're doing there, but you're there for
yeah,
6 months. And I know a lot of people probably do it to get away from things, or I know the pay is probably really good because you're
yeah,
kind of isolating yourself for 6 months, especially back then when they didn't have the technology. They show us a second of him playing computer chess. So it's probably
chess.
the most um, technologically advanced game they had at the time.
Yeah,
Um,
until he pours his drink on it.
yeah, and then you've got them watching VHS tapes, and they're all recorded episodes of things. Because the guy's like, I've already seen the ending of a game show, and so he changes that. So you're kind of isolated and all that. So I
Yeah,
have a feeling some of these people are running from things. Other people are probably there for the scientific study. I
yeah,
got that with Bennings. Blair seemed to be a scientist.
yeah.
Knowles was the cook, so he probably
Gary
was.
was, yeah, Gary was, I think, security. He
Yeah,
was
and
like the
I
law.
also doesn't it feel like I have a feeling every one of these camps has somebody military or as a representative. He seemed to
Yeah,
be that kind of guy,
yeah,
although he did hand over um, the being in charge when they started to think he might be infected.
yeah,
So he maybe he's retired military or maybe he's just the guy they put in security. Like we said, Clark
yeah,
was the guy with the dogs. Fuse, I think he was a scientist because he kept
yeah,
doing stuff.
yeah. Because he was
Palmer,
trying to figure out a way to test
right.
or
Um,
something.
the only one Windows was Windows the guy that knew how to do the radios. He was
He
the
was the
radio guy.
radio guy. Yeah,
Palmer's the other pilot because he's the one that volunteered to go at first, and they said no. And then Norris, I didn't really. He's got to be another science guy, right? Because I didn't
yeah,
really gauge what he
yeah,
was.
yeah.
Um,
I didn't either. And it's funny too because it right from the beginning, there seems to be a lot of tension between some of the characters. So you kind of get the feeling that they've already been there for a long time. Like
yeah,
Windows and Palmer were like button heads all the time.
yeah, you definitely got the big personalities kind of smashing into each other.
Yeah, and then Gary went in to see Windows, and he's like, "Have you gotten anybody on the radio?" So there was always, and this was before like the bad stuff started to happen. You know,
Right. And
uh,
how could it not be though? I mean, you're trapped in this environment where you're shut down and whatever they're doing is in that little bit of camp area. We didn't get to see them do anything else.
yeah, and you
Um,
really don't know what they're doing there,
yeah,
other than they're just in Antarctica and they're scientists.
I think they're probably tracking weather and maybe seeing how things are affected by the cold and different odds and ends. But yeah, they don't need, and that's the cool thing about the story is he doesn't have to get into it, and he doesn't.
Yeah,
We're not bored with any of that
you don't have a
extra
chance
stuff.
to
Right.
be bored.
I'm checking real quick to see the guy the Clark guy. I'm just trying to see if there's anything listed that we would remember from other than it. I swear he was on one of those TV shows where he had a big part when he was the dad of something, but I'm probably mixing him up with somebody else. But yeah, he was in a ton of movies and he did do a lot of TV movies, but it doesn't look like any of the ones that I was thinking. But he was in Risky Business and Under Fire.
Wow.
He's done a lot of different yeah, well, one episode of Happy Days. I'm sure that's what we're thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he's the one in it that kills himself in the bathtub because he can't go back to face
Oh, okay.
the Pennywise. And I guess yeah, he's been in a ton of stuff. Couple episodes of Matlock. So, anyways, I'll have to go look up to see who the actual dad was in Webster. I'm sure somebody knows. But all of these guys are pretty. And they're all really good actors, and they're all very uh, different stages in their career. So I just don't get why this didn't draw people to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I liked it because you could really almost feel like the relationships between the characters were the way that the actors related to each other. Like I could totally see it if the actors who played Palmer and Windows like really hated each other in real life, you know,
Yeah,
just
for
because they
sure.
were so good at showing how they didn't like each other.
And then I'll fix it because it's not Larry. Of course, it's not Larry David because that's Seinfeld, but it's Keith David
Keith David.
is Childs, and him, I would say, and of course Kurt Russell. Those are probably the two biggest names. They've done so much stuff. I mean, the guy that plays Blair, he's been in a lot of things before he passed. Dr. Cooper, he's the one I wish I could think off the top of my head. What was he in? Oh, he was he was in LA Law.
Okay.
He was one of the main players, 171 episodes of LA Law.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean this is a big cast for them to be able to get this. And he was coming off of Carpenter would have been coming off of Escape from New York, I think would have been released right before this. And so
Okay.
he was riding high. And so for it to not do well must have been just like him thinking career ending because he's coming. I mean, Halloween does really well. Assault on Precinct 13 did really well, even though that was the one that people I think perked up at. Like, oh, he's laying a foundation of good storytelling and good filmmaking. And then he does Escape from New York, which is an amazing sci-fi action adventure kind of thing, futuristic apocalyptic movie. And then for the thing not to do well, I bet you he took a step back wondering if he had misidentified what Hollywood and America wanted at the time. But now you look at it and you're like, well, this is one of the greatest movies ever
Movies
made. So
ever. Yeah.
how do people not understand it? So
Yeah.
it's
Do you have a, oh, I was going to say, do you have a favorite character out of,
it's really hard not to love McGreedy. So I mean, they really made that. But one of the characters that I enjoy the most, I think Knowles is funny. He plays it
yeah.
in such a tongue in cheek almost. He's the lowly cook in a way, but at the same time, he seems to kind of be bulletproof when it comes to authority and just
Yeah.
does what he wants. And he's not going to listen to everybody else, but he's also smart enough to know when he needs to listen to the other guys.
Hmm.
So I do enjoy his character. I thought Blair's very interesting the way he goes from psychotic to hey, I'm cool, let me back in the building,
Yeah.
everything's
Yeah. I'm
fine.
good. I just want to be, yeah, I was going to mention that
After he
because,
just destroys everything because he and so then how we have to start wondering at what point because at when he figures out what the alien's doing, he starts to destroy everything so that there's no way for the alien to get out of there. But at the same time, he's also stranding everybody at the location.
yeah.
They lock him up, and then later he's out and about doing stuff, building a spaceship and all that stuff. So at some point, he becomes the alien. So you have to
Hmm.
wonder at what point was he the alien, and was maybe he destroying everything so that he would be trapped with them, so he could get rid of everybody and then escape, or if he was, became the alien later.
Yeah. So he'd almost have to have become the alien later because the alien doesn't like the cold.
You'd have to think, yeah.
And so basically, I think the goal for the alien would be to inhabit a human and or turn into a human, whatever you'd like to call it, um, and then go elsewhere and spread, you
Well,
know?
we don't know if that's the point. We don't know if the
Yeah.
point is for it to conquer and take over because it is building a spaceship. Maybe it just crash landed and now it wants to go home.
Yeah.
Um, we
True.
don't know, but they don't know either. And their response immediately is to destroy it. But of course, you would when you watch what the alien does. You
Right.
have no point but to think that it's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So, of
so
course,
we got
the
the
classic first sighting is the in the dog kennel.
Well, they find that body at top with the two faces that are kind of merging together. They find that in the Norwegian
Oh, right, right. I
base.
forgot
So
about
they
that.
have
Yeah.
that. They do
Yeah.
have that. But yeah, the dogs, when they put the dog in, and there's a beautiful husky, and they put it in the kennel with the other huskies, and it starts turning into its thing and trying to absorb all the dogs. Now, I guess what it was going to do is absorb all the dogs and then become all the dogs. Is that what we think it does? Because they're not
Yeah.
very clear about that. Because sometimes it'll attack a human and then that human becomes the thing as it's changing. But
Yeah,
then
so
other
why would it
times,
need to absorb all the dogs unless it was just threatened by all the dogs?
yeah, I don't know. They were growling and barking, but it seems odd that because you think of replication as it being a separate, like cell splitting, but there were times when the monster would attack the person and then the person itself would sort of change.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to tell exactly what they were trying to tell us it was doing. But that's the only criticism I really have of the whole thing.
And does it really matter because it's freaking terrifying?
Oh yeah, and it's amazing. And the best thing about this movie, the thing that I love the most about this movie, is that the special effects guy is just a kid who had no experience and hadn't done anything before, and he somehow gets hired to do this, and he has no clue what he's doing, and he was able to do all of these practical effects, and it's amazing.
Yeah, the effects are like second to none in this movie, even for it being 1982.
Yeah, there's no CGI. In fact, I think the CGI hurts the sequel that's the prequel that came out in like 20, what is it, 2011?
Yeah.
Or they had one that had it's called The Thing,
Mm.
or and it takes place in the Norwegian camp and it leads up to the events of this thing. And they use CGI for some of the alien stuff, and I don't think it works as well.
Yeah. Yeah. But I gotta say, and people in that camp, I don't care how curious I was seeing this thing, I'd be like, you know what? We're out of here. We're gonna like burn this thing or put it out in the snow.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
doesn't make
want it
any sense. Yeah, when you
because
see
it's like
anything,
starting to thaw because the juices are flowing, it starts getting goopy.
and they have the doctor do a autopsy, and they find, you know, functioning,
Human organs. Yeah.
and but just one set, so you can tell that it's becoming the human. I guess is what we're seeing here. So I guess they just need to be a little clearer on the process of replication. But other than that, I think it's really cool. And
Yeah.
then at that one point when the dog is got his tentacles whipping out and they're hitting the other dogs and it's spitting some sort of like acid liquid or
Acid.
stomach
Yeah.
acid or something and hitting the dog and stuff. That's probably the worst thing that happened to that dog that day. But I uh I think that's a really cool setup where you kind of see, and that would make more sense if it was taking the DNA off the dog and then it would dissolve the other thing and then it would become by producing the other parts. Maybe that's how it does it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it gives us just enough to be horrified by the process.
Yeah. Well, and then we have these here. Uh,
And all of these are that guy, Norris.
yep.
And Norris has a heart problem. And I think this is the weakness of the alien, is that it duplicated Norris, which we seen earlier. We saw the shadow of a man talk to the dog. So we have to assume that was Norris.
Hmm.
It duplicates Norris, but in duplicating Norris, it must have duplicated the heart issue.
Yep.
And
Because
so
that's why
Norris,
he like kind of just like has a
yeah,
heart attack.
yeah, he gets too worked up because at that point they all think MacReady is a duplicate. He breaks into the room or back into the facility after being cut loose into the snow by was it Gnarls?
Nulls. Yeah.
Gnarls, and so he gets in there and he's threatening them with dynamite. He's gonna kill everybody if they don't, back off. And then he has a heart attack, and so they're trying to save him. The doctor starts doing CPR, and then the thing's chest opens up, and his hands go into the chest, which is now a giant mouth, and then he rips his arms off.
Yeah. And a new head forms because this is his original head that like
Yeah.
once he gets put on fire, like the other head like expands and the neck
Yeah, I was just saying
and
before he gets put on fire, he becomes the one that's over to
this
this
one.
one. Yeah, the whole remember it shoots up into the air and it becomes the whole weird spidery holding onto the ceiling, his chest head.
Yeah.
Um, and then he gets set on. And that's the other thing. What about that? Child stands there for what? 20 seconds just staring at it, and then they have to tell him to light it up. You wouldn't even, there's no hesitation. You light the giant, crazy looking alien thing up. You don't
Yeah.
wait to see what it's doing. This obviously isn't a good thing. You know, the
Right,
doctor's
right.
arms are gone, blood is everywhere, and you're just going to sit there. And I get it. We say this, of course, you'd be overwhelmed by it, but I'm
Yeah,
just like,
in
light
shock or
it
whatever.
up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
So, but that's the really cool thing. And the head comes off, hits the ground, the tongue
turns.
shoots out, the tentacle drags it across, and then it becomes the spider head, and then
Yeah,
it creeps behind him, and then that's when Cooper, the other pilot's like, "You got to be kidding me!" And when they turn
yeah.
around and they find the head there.
The spider head. Now this part, this whole movie is terrifying, but the one thing that terrifies me the most about this movie is this spider crab head thing.
You know,
And
and
I
in my mind, it's almost comic relief because it's so funny their
ridiculous.
reaction to
Yeah.
it and just how much this thing wants to live that it becomes this spider crab. But yeah,
Yeah.
could you imagine that skittering across your kitchen floor coming at you?
Yeah.
That would be
And another thing that's really good that really plays into it, for me anyways, the terror is the sounds that these monsters make. They
yeah,
don't all make like the same sound. So like I think it was Bennings, um, they're the ones he's the one that they found in the snow and
yeah.
he looked like Bennings, but his hands were and he just made this like cry like
Yeah, like a
you
soul,
know
it's like a mournful, like
yeah,
it knew it was about to die and it
yeah,
didn't want to die and it just starts screaming. Now, the funny thing here is the special effects on so they this they set this guy on fire, his head pulls away, falls to the floor, runs away. So the guy that made all the special effects didn't realize at the time that he made it with a bunch of toxic stuff that when it mixed together was going to be an issue, especially when you lit it on fire. And then they had to light it on fire and they light the room on fire with this special torch stuff so that the whole thing looks like it's on fire. But then, of course, it interacts with the fumes of the toxic stuff, and they could have killed everybody in the room.
oh
And
my
somehow
gosh,
they don't. But that's the funny part of this thing. It's just the dumb luck of how this kid got away with all these amazing effects and not actually hurting anybody, when with all these freak accidents that a professional that went to school might know or apprenticed properly. This was just some guy that kind of got his lucky break, and this is what he came up with. So I just think that those stories are just fascinating because
yeah,
this could have been a documentary we watched about the tragic ending of John Carpenter's career and how all these people are dead and all this
no
other
more Kurt
stuff.
Russell, no Big Trouble in
Right.
Little China.
Right. There's so many different things that could have been different.
Yeah,
Um, so I just think it's funny, these little notes that you would get from the director's commentary and some of the other stuff. But this whole sequence, it can't be more than what, 5 minutes,
yeah,
10 minutes tops. And it's one of the greatest special effects I think you'll see in any kind of
hmm,
movie, and when no CGI, and that's the thing that makes it so amazing.
yeah. And then we have the other forms. I love how like they made it so that the creatures didn't all look the same.
Yeah, I
Like
did too.
this is Palmer, I
Right.
think.
And that's
I think
after, so they do the test, and the test is you heat the thing up. If it touches the blood, if the blood's infected, it'll try and get away. Because we learned from the last scene that the head tried to get away.
yeah, because it
So,
doesn't like heat. So
so of course, now if I was one of the people that they thought was infected and I wasn't, I would have fought not about getting tied down, but do not tie me to the other idiots in case one
yeah,
of them is. I think that's the only other flaw, but I think it's perfect in the way that people in a stressful environment would react, like we're not thinking everything through. But
yeah.
somebody should have been like, you got to not tie me to the other two in case one of them changes. But so then we learned that one of the people,
It
Cooper, is an alien.
yeah, it was
And
Palmer was
yeah,
his
was it Palmer the pilot?
yeah.
Yeah, Palmer the pilot.
Because
Cooper's the doctor, and he's already dead.
Palmer is tied with Gary and Childs on the
Right.
like couch bench thing.
And they untie him as he's turning into the monster, and he clamps down on the radio guy.
Windows. Yep. Yeah, he
Windows.
gets his head. Like
Yeah.
the,
And
uh,
that's what happens afterwards. So I guess the creature attacks because that guy's set on fire. But after he attacks, he must infect him with his DNA, and then the DNA transforms him into this
yeah,
thing. And eventually, I guess he would have come out looking just like Windows, but he didn't get an opportunity because they go after him. But
yeah,
then later, down in the corner, you got the monster that comes up when they're trying to blow everything up, and it's got aspects of most of the characters and
mm,
the dogs and all that stuff. So obviously,
yeah,
one little bit of DNA gets away, it's got imprints of all the DNA it tried to copy.
yeah. I love the jump scare for the blood test.
Yes, it's very cool.
Yeah,
The way they have it set up so perfectly where you think it's a certain person and it ends up never being that person. So um it really gets you when it does hit and the monster blood pops up and everybody goes crazy.
yeah. I like it because how, like when they get the first, I'll call it a positive, and then they fight the two, they take care of the two monsters, and Gary's like, then they like, well, let's just finish up the tests. So I think Gary was like the last one, and he's like, I don't want to spend the whole winter tied to this bench.
Yes, he was very funny and he's so angry, but at the same time, it was like a calm anger that you could kind of tell. I don't know, it's just a funny way of delivering the line. It
Yeah,
really kind of humanized the whole thing.
yeah. My question is, why do they have so many blowtorches in Antarctica? Like,
I
what?
wonder if they use it to defrost certain things,
Maybe. That makes sense.
burn down, the ice
Uh,
or maybe things that get stuck, or maybe I don't
yeah.
know if you could use it to overheat something without damaging it. I don't know, but it's fun that they have them.
Yeah. I mean, it really goes with the story because that's their main weapon of choice.
I got the feeling that guns wouldn't kill this thing.
Oh no, definitely not.
So they needed something that would be able to encase it completely. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where they probably know maybe they don't normally have all those blow torches, but they do because they knew they needed it for it to work in the movie. But the only thing also that I would have an issue with special effects wise is that scene at the end when it's under the floorboards, popping everything up, and then the tentacles come out. They're obviously claymation. Like old school,
Mm,
like Ray Harryhausen or whatever. That kind of
yeah.
you could tell that it's not, but still it's not terrible.
Yeah.
So maybe that would be the only time you would think, oh, a little dash of CGI. But I'm glad they didn't go back and do it like they did with the Star Wars stuff. I kind
Yeah.
of like the authenticity of it.
Yeah. But man, I love this movie.
Yeah, I
It,
mean, even to, it doesn't matter how many times I've seen it. It's just enjoyable. It's one of those movies that you don't really. Sometimes you'll find yourself watching a movie that you've seen before, and you start looking at
yeah.
your phone or whatever. And this is a movie you can sit there and you're captivated by the performances and by the situation the whole time.
Yeah.
So this I think is funny because the movie ends and Childs has been gone the whole time. They know he left the building, but they don't know what he's been up to. And these are the last two people, and they sit down, and we have no clue. And I looked into it, and if you ask Keith David, about Childs, he says, "Well, obviously, I'm not an alien." If you talk to John Carpenter, he says, "Well, if you watch the film, only Kurt Russell's breathing. He's the only one that you can see consistently breathing cold air out." Which I watched, and I was like, "Well, it's kind of true." But there is a spot or two where Childs gets exasperated and he makes a big breath, and then you see some air come out. But for the most part, you barely see any air come out of his cold air, the frost.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also, if you watch the sequel, which came out in 2000, I think 11, like I said, which is actually the prequel, the Norwegians talk about how when somebody is reformed, when the alien reforms as another person, it can't copy anything that is metallic or inorganic within the person. So if they had like a bad injury,
A
it would
pacemaker
any of
or
that stuff, something in the
metal
shoulder,
filling.
earring, and apparently this, if you catch it, he still has his earring in his ear. So he could be human, he could not be. But at the time, you kind of get the feeling that he's not human when you watch these two interact. And um, McReady's like, we're just going to sit here and see what happens. And then it
Yeah.
ends.
Yeah. They're like, I'm tired. We
Right.
just
But he's
fought
like,
these aliens.
he already's resigned to dying. He's already said it. He said it to the other guys. We're not leaving. We need to make sure this thing doesn't leave either. Everybody dies, basically. And that's the end of this. And it's an interesting Omega Man moment if you've seen the Charlton Heston Omega Man, which is a retelling of um, I Am Legend from the 70s, where the guy the hero kind of knows that he's going to have to sacrifice everything to make sure that the bad guys don't win.
Um, yeah.
But this is also the first in Carpenter's idea. He calls it his apocalyptic trilogy. And this is the first film that he gives us of that. And the second one is Prince of Darkness, and the third is Mouth of Madness. He considers those his end of the world kind of movies, which I would have thought Escape from New York would have fallen into that, but I
Yeah.
guess he doesn't consider that one apocalyptic as much as he does these guys.
Yeah. But great movie. If you have not seen it, you really, really should check it out. It's something that will stick with you for a long time, even if you only
Yeah,
see it once.
yeah, I mean, it's a great movie. It's a well done, well written. Everything, I mean, everything about it is darn near perfect. Um, it's so perfect, in fact, that if you watch the next one they make, they pretty much just follow the same blueprint, and they just shifted to what camp is it in, and they throw a girl in there, of course, because you can't have a movie made in the 2000s that didn't have. That's the other
Yeah.
weird thing about this movie is that there is no female, which makes sense in that camp setting. But
Well, it was funny because I was thinking about that and I'm like, well, you know what? It's 1982. And in 1982, there weren't a lot of women in the sciences that would be given probably those kinds of assignments or,
yeah,
so
and they would be smart enough to not want to be in those
yeah,
situations with a bunch of idiots like these guys.
yeah,
A lot of these guys come across as cavemen. So,
yeah.
um,
Uh,
but I would suggest watching the other one. I enjoy it. It's not as good as the original, but it's interesting to watch because they line up certain things so that when we see them in Carpenter's thing, you'll see like the axe in the wall in the Norwegian camp. You'll see why it's that way, or why the guy that kills himself, you'll see him do it in the movie. It also gives us more information about the alien itself. So it is
yeah,
definitely worth watching
I'll have
if
to
you're
watch
a
it.
fan of these kinds of movies.
Yeah, did John Carpenter? He didn't do that one too,
Nah, it's just
right?
one of those ones I think where he gets producer credit. Or
Yeah, okay.
cast is
Because
really
that's
good though. It's Mary Elizabeth. I never could think of
Master
her last.
Antonio.
Yeah, the lady that's what that was in the Star Wars show recently, and she was in Scott Pilgrim and oh, what was the one? What was the Ikuo, the lady that's the apprentice for Anakin? You know what I'm talking about?
Ahsoka,
Ahsoka.
Rosario Dawson.
No, no, her other friend, the one of
Oh,
the general lady.
oh,
That's
okay. I
Mary
haven't seen
Elizabeth
Ahsoka
something.
yet.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
She's in
Mary
that one too.
Elizabeth. Okay.
And she was in Death Proof with by Tarantino. If you like that, that's a good horror movie that she's in, and she's in a lot of great stuff. She was
Yeah.
in Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Oh,
She's been in a lot of fun off the wall movies, but she plays the female scientist that they bring in who's an expert on something like either the ice or the life form, and or unexplained biological life forms. I think maybe that's why they bring her in, and then the rest of the camp is just the guys. And they found guys that kind of look the same as some of the actors, like the guy with the gun and stuff. And so it's interesting to see it, 30, 20, 30 years later, kind of reenact why things are the way they are in the movie we get in the 80s.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. All right. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check it out. I never saw it because I always thought it was like a remake, and I'm not a huge remake fan.
Hey, I'm with you
Um,
on that. I
you
mean,
know,
I'll watch a remake, but I'm never excited to.
yeah. But
And in a way, it is a remake because it's like I said, they just kind of took the blueprint and slid it over a little bit, a little tweak here or there, but it's kind of the same idea. Find a
yeah,
monster, monster freezes, monster takes over camp, kind of thing. So,
yeah, but it makes sense that it because you explained it, I don't know, last year or something. We were talking about something and you had said, oh, it's more like a prequel kind of because it ends
oh yeah,
where
it ends
they're
with the helicopter coming up and chasing the dog, and
chasing the dog.
you could put them back to back, and it would be like it was flying into this new in the old movie.
Wow.
So it's kind of cool in that aspect. Now, the other cool thing that it's not out yet, and I don't know when it's coming out, but they remastered the Xbox PS2 The Thing game, which takes place, I want to say, a couple weeks after the end of this movie, and it's a game that they're going to put out for the new Xbox and the new PlayStation. All redone with better graphics and all that stuff. But the whole point is that the military sends in this group of people to try and figure out what happened. And then as you're
Yeah.
playing the game, you end up having to question, are the people around you actually other soldiers, or are they duplicates and the thing trying to take over as you sweep the camp? It's a fun game. I really loved playing it when it came out. And like I said, it takes place just after this.
Wow.
Oh, we just got a Amber Alert,
Mm.
just in case it just blew through the sound system.
I heard a beep. Um, so
All the phones in the house just went off.
oh yeah, that would do it. All right. All right. And now it's time for our not Stephen King book of the week. And what do we have here, Eric?
All right, so this week we want to push Blobbert 3. And the reason we're doing this one is it is the third in his series of Blobbert shorts, but this one's important because all of the proceeds goes towards Megan
Megan
Stockton,
Stockton.
who's had a heart surgery recently, and this will help go towards paying for some of the medical expenses that she's incurred at the hospital and after the surgery and all that stuff. So Mike just happened, it's done by Mike Enenbach. He just happened to finish it around the time that she was having the issues. So he gave the story to her to publish so that she could get all of the proceeds. So even if you haven't read 1 and 2, I would recommend just going out, buy 3 now, and go find 1 and 2, and you can read them. I'm pretty sure you can read them out of order. You
Yeah,
don't really, I
probably.
don't think it's going to matter as much. Mike's really cool about letting you bounce around, um, but each one's going to build on it. He likes to do that too. He likes to layer his stories. So I haven't had a
Yeah.
chance to read this one yet, but it is for a good cause. And I think everybody should go out there and support both Mike and Megan. So the best way to do
Yeah.
that is to purchase this, and you'll help, you'll make Mike happy and you'll help Megan
Yep.
get towards
And
that goal.
I got it on Godless. I think it was like 99 cents for the ebook.
Yeah.
So
You can buy it on Amazon. They have paperbacks. And I want to say 1 and 2 is probably only on Amazon. I don't think they would be on Godless.
yeah, 1 and 2 are on Amazon in paperback. Um, from my own because I was like, well, heck yeah, I'm gonna buy 3. It's by Mike and it helps Megan.
Right.
Um, But then I'm like, I definitely want 1 and 2 as well, and they're not very long.
No, these are
Um,
really quick reads. You're gonna have a good
yeah,
time with them. Characters funny. There's a lot of tongue-in-cheek humor. If you know anything about indie horror, I think there's some things in there that you may or may not pick up. So go look for your Easter eggs and support Megan by getting the third one, and
yeah.
support my by getting the other ones. He's got copies. I know he's got copies of 1 and 2. If you want a signed copy, you could always DM him through Facebook, um, or like buy them on Amazon.
Mm. All right, so that is our episode and our first episode in our series of horror movies that shaped our youth. So yeah, hopefully we'll have some more good movies for you. I think the next one will be my turn. Um, so that'll be interesting. And I think our next episode will be Body Rides from Richard Lehman.
Yeah, so we'll try and sandwich a layman in there
Yeah.
before we jump to another movie.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Take it easy.